Afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Directorate of Visiting Research Professors Program and the Dalai Lama Chair in Nalanda Studies, Goa University, and the Foundation for Universal Responsibility of His Highness the Dalai Lama, today we have a talk on the aspects of the Nalanda tradition, the methodologies of inquiry, understanding the mind, and its training, and the nature of consciousness. I invite all of you for this session, which is a continuation of the lecture series which began on the 6th of November 2020, where we had an introductory lecture on what is the Nalanda tradition and what is its value today. So the speaker for today is Khampo Tashi Tsering. On behalf of Goa University, I welcome the Vice Chancellor to say a few words for this session. Sir?
Yes, thank you very much. Uh, Good afternoon to everyone, and particularly to our distinguished Dalai Lama Chair Professor in Nalanda Studies, the Venerable Khampo Tashi Tsering. Uh, we have already been privileged to hear him give his inaugural lecture some months ago. And we are delighted that now this series of lectures on the aspects of the Nalanda tradition, the methodologies of inquiry, understanding the mind and its training in the nature of consciousnesses, is going to unfold from today. We will be having today and in the next couple of days 3 online sessions, and then in the month of April we would have 3 sessions which would be in physical mode. So we are going to be, I think, all experiencing a wonderful flow, a festival of ideas that are really central to the whole notion of consciousness, of mind, cognition, all of which are, of course, exceedingly important areas of scientific concern today. We have had very fortunate to develop a formal relationship of cooperation and friendship with the Foundation for Universal Responsibility of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And specifically, we are very grateful for the support they're giving us in the setting up of the Dalai Lama Chair in Nalanda Studies. And we are going to be, as a part of the activities of the Dalai Lama Chair, focusing on the study both of the Sutra or wisdom as well as the method of practice, which are, really in some ways aspects of a very ancient tradition, but we are going to be doing it in a modern Indian university like ourselves. We are expecting, of course, to learn a lot, since these are areas of inquiry that have not traditionally been a part of our own focus. So there is not just a great pleasure in having a scholar of the stature of Venerable Khampo Tashi Tsering, holding the chair, but there's also excitement about the fact that an entire new branch of learning is now opening up. Now, the Nalanda tradition is exceedingly important. For 7 glorious centuries, from the 5th century of the Common Era, the Mahavihar in Nalanda was not only a repository of ancient wisdom, it was also the site of a unique method of teaching learning. It's a method of teaching learning which really is about a cooperative, argumentative dialogue between the teacher and the taught, between the teacher and the student, based on asking and answering questions in order to stimulate critical thinking and to draw out ideas, also to draw out underlying suppositions and the inherent contradictions. And I think in our higher education system in India, I think we really must now emulate, incorporate, and repatriate the Nalanda tradition into our institutions of higher learning. If we are, as an education system, to emerge as a fount of creativity and innovation. And the great Nalanda masters, all 17 of them were Indian. So, really, when Nalanda fell in the 20th century, there was an entire tradition of scholarship that would have died if it had not been rescued on the Tibetan plateau in the great Buddhist monasteries of Tibet. And I think one of the missions really is to take this sapling and to uh, replant it in the hopefully fertile soil of the modern Indian university. So once again, a very warm welcome to everybody to this session. A very warm welcome to the Dalai Lama Chair Professor, the Venerable Khampo Tashi Tsering. And like everybody else, I'm looking forward very much to this lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Today we also have Dr. Anita Dudhane with us, and she's a practicing allergist and a clinical immunologist, and has also been very actively involved in facilitating the establishment of the Dalai Lama Chair for the Nalanda Studies at Goa University. The establishment of the Nalanda Chair was on the 11th of December 2019. I request Dr. Anita to say a few words.
Hello, and I'm just representing Mr. Rajiv Mehrotra of the responsibility on his behalf and as the foundation friendship between the Goa University, which is a modern institution, and the ancient Nalanda tradition, which is of much importance in the young of many institutions and otherwise. So thank you, Venerable Tashi Tsering, for being here and for giving us this wonderful talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Now I would just like to introduce the speaker for today, who's been Khampo Tashi Tsering. So Geshe Tashi Tsering was born in Purang and in West Tibet in 1958, and at an early age he was accompanied by his younger brother to escape the occupation of his country by the Chinese government and its state-sponsored destruction, which was run by the exiled Tibetan government in India, and his family moved to a refugee settlement in Karnataka in 1970. Geshe Tashi was among the first to become a monk at the newly established exile ceramic college of Sera Monastic University. After following the traditional study program centered around the 5 key till 1990, Geshe Tashi has been teaching in the West since 1991, first at Nalanda Monastery in France, then from 1994 to 2018 at Yamyang Buddhist Center, Lhasa. teacher at Jamlan Buddhist Center, Leeds. Geshe Tashi has created the Foundation of Buddhist Thought campus course and the Foundation of Buddhist Thought online course. He is known for his understanding of the Western mindset and for his ability to present the most complex Buddhist teachings with clarity, authenticity, and sophistication. He has a rebellious streak and a naughty sense of humor. MA in Social Anthropology at the School of Oriental and African Studies of London University, in May 2008, Dalai Lama of Tibet. He is also a recipient of the Order of British Empire. I invite Shila to deliver his
Okay.
Shila,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can, but there are lots of breaks.
Yes, could you please put on your video?
Yes, I have put on my video. Can you see my video, my image?
No. Your
Okay.
video is not on.
Okay,
We can
it
hear
is.
you, but your video is not on.
Okay.
Kindly unmute your video.
Because I can see my image on my screen, and can you see me now?
No.
Okay. Both are my video and my mic, both are on. They are not.
We can hear your voice, but we
Okay.
can't see you yet.
Because my video is on. It is not blocked here. From here, it's on.
Okay.
Yeah, start. People are saying they can't hear you.
Geshe-la,
Yes.
you can start the talk.
Okay, that's great. I think that's a good idea.
There must be some range problem. Yeah.
Yes. So
Thank
I would like to thank to the Vice Chancellor of Goa University, his dedication and the what you call the consistent support and seeing the importance of having this to revise Nalanda, the way of educating ourselves in the modern university environment, and which is, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama's one of the main wishes that to revive ancient Indian education sort of way of educating ourselves, which has a unique way of educating ourselves, to revive initially in the Indian, those education institutions, including universities, and then eventually maybe wider, the world. And vice chancellors great determination and the continued support to make that happen is something very, very moving, and seeing that, understanding that is very encouraging for many of us. And also Professor Kaka, your support for that, and also Dr. Ananda. And so my role here is really very much just to share my understanding, the Nalanda, great Indian Nalanda masters, the understandings, how to learn, how to live in this world peacefully, more constructively, harmoniously, internally and externally, more sort of what you call the positive interaction through the different philosophies and a different way of how to perceive the world that we all share. And my learning these great Indian masters, this great knowledge is through reading Tibetan texts. Many of, in fact, more than 230 something, Indian great something volumes of texts written by the great Indian masters, mainly coming from Nalanda, the universities, translated into Tibetan, started around 8th century, and then all the way up to, I think, 14th, 15th century. And there are about 230 something volumes written by the great Indian masters, translated into Tibetan. So whatever small things that I've learned is through reading in Tibetan, translated from the Sanskrit texts. And obviously, we all need to bear in mind most of these great Indian masters, starting from the Buddha Gautama to all the way up to 14th to 15th century Common Era Indian masters that I have, the texts that I've learned, they are mainly, the Indian masters and what you call the scholars and practitioners from Buddhist traditions. So some of my explanations, what I'm going to share with you may have a little bit Buddhist flavors or Buddhist, taste, but that doesn't mean, I'm going to share with you Buddhist, concept and theories or the practices. What I will try to do, I will extract some of those great methodologies, concepts, understandings, which are common to, in certain extents, all the, the humanity. And that's what I'm trying to do. We started this in last year, November the 6th, that I gave a general, like a structure of the Nalanda masters' way of, educating themselves and educating their fellow students. And
today, starting this afternoon, and we'll have also tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, these 3 days or 3 sessions, I'm going to cover, as much as I can in these, the 4 sort of topics that I have, chosen. And, the first one is main methodologies of the Nalanda Masters' way of inquiry, how to investigate, how to analyze. And which is, I thought, very, very interesting and very, very relevant, in certain extents to the modern world, and also for the university students and the university levels of, the people who listen and watch this lecture. And also we will try to cover understanding the role of the mind in our everyday life, which is also something Nalanda Masters have talked a lot about, the importance of understanding of our, understanding of the mind, the role of the mind, how much, our minds, emotions, thoughts, consciousnesses play in our daily lives to make our life, very more constructive, more peaceful, and so forth. And also, these great masters, Indian masters, have talked about, the lot on the understanding of consciousness, understanding of minds, thoughts, emotions, and the varieties of, the consciousnesses that operate in our everyday lives, and their impact in our lives. And also the way of training the mind, how, because these great masters, Indian masters, talk a lot about, training our minds, which is something very crucial individually and collectively. The individual's life be more peaceful, more relaxed, more constructive. And when we share our lives with others, to benefit to the others. So these are the 4 topics that I have, selected to share, to talk on today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow. And also, as Vice Chancellor briefly mentioned, we have planned to, me to visit, if everything goes well, with regard to this pandemic, I visit in April to continue this talk. So that is really some kind of general, preliminary, what I would like to share with you. And because our nature of our topic, what I would like to start my talk first, these great Indian masters, Nalanda masters, like Nagarjuna, 2nd century in Common Era, and all the way down to like the Atisha, 11th century Common Era, they all had expressed the importance of, the paying attention to our intention to join any kind of activities or any kind of events that we participate. For example, today we are here and I'm talking to you, and you are participating, listening, contemplating what I'm saying. This, while we are participating this kind of interaction with our body, speech, and mind, it is important to make sure our intention to participate the event pay attention and be a positive, a constructive intention, or in the Buddhist term, the term is used motivation, or the intention to participate. And that intention, if that intention is a positive, constructive intention, our activity, our participation to this event will be helpful, useful to ourselves and to others. And this what I think I would like to start to say that. I myself, this morning when I woke up, I usually do say, what are the activities that I'm going to do, and I set my intention in the morning, to say I will do all my best, and today's my activities, whatever, including giving this talk, to something helpful, useful to myself and to others, listeners, people who participate, and that kind of very simple intention, I have set this morning, and I set this just before we start this, this talk. And that is something which these great Indian masters have encouraged to do that. And because it is part of academic way of studying, and I would encourage to people who are skeptical, the benefit of doing that, I would encourage you to do some kind of experiment, maybe 2-3 weeks, 2-3 weeks in the morning or during the day, or just before beginning of the event that you're going to participate, to set a positive mind, to bring a positive intention to participate. And with that, then engage in that event, then, to take a short, to take a diary, to put in diary how, sometimes quite useful to do that. This is the way of modern education, the academic education, that we collect the data and so on and so forth. Sometimes I found it's very, very useful, because although more detail will come later, when we participate with the routine activities or some kind of special events, when we participate, in that participation, it is not just our body participate that event. It is not just our speech. It is also our mind. And these Nalanda masters, they talk a lot about the power of our mind when we participate with the activities, and training our minds. Before participating, before starting the event, to setting a positive intention, they have said it is tremendously helpful and useful. Though I don't have that great experience, but over the last nearly 40 years, I've been doing this, and I've been encouraging others to do that. And my understanding and my experience, it is very, very useful. If our intention is in a constructive, in a positive mood, then that is great. If our intention is not in a positive mood or not in a constructive mood, then if there's a possibility to very deliberately, very intentionally make it positive. And that is at least to set a neutral, state of mind, which will be very, very helpful. And that is the one thing which I would like to share to you. And the second thing is, these great masters, these great Indian masters, they have said many times the importance of having a calm, clear, and rested mind. The rested mind. And and this is also something in our university environment, the education institutions, people who participate, whatever subject that you are studying, economy, biology, the neurobiology, whatever subject, that we are studying, having our mind in that kind of quality of calmness, quality of clarity, and very not restless, and more relaxed, yet very clear, and that kind of mental state is something these great masters have encouraged to have. And these are not the religious, the element. These are just something common, the mental qualities that we all will benefit. So, again here, I encourage to my friends, my colleagues, when I talk, when I give talks, I always encourage them to say, look, to give at least 5 to 7 minutes every day to really make, our general state of mind to have a quality of calm, clear, and relax. And if we give that kind of, we don't need to invest huge amounts of time, just 5 to 7, 8 minutes, don't need to be a special place. Find a place where less noisy. These days it might be quite difficult, but many of us have a small space to find a quiet place to try to relax all these busy thoughts, emotions. Then experience a glimpse of calmness, stillness, and the clarity. Of course, if initially it won't be that easy to experience that kind of, the basic, the what you call the mental quality, stillness, calmness, and the clarity. But if we invest like 5 to 8 minutes every day, or frequently, every day might be difficult for some people, frequently, this will gradually, our minds will learn gradually to have that kind of mental qualities. And these two are which I would like to, encourage to you, initially in a form of experiment, just to experiment, see how it works, just for a few weeks, like 3 to 4 weeks, very deliberately experiment that, and also take a short notes how it goes, and then at the end of the 4 weeks to see, is there any difference? Quite often people say, the benefits and the usefulness of having this kind of mental quality. So what I've suggested here, two things, which these great Nalanda masters have repeatedly have said. That is, setting the positive intention in the morning before we start our daily activities, or in the during the day before we start a particular event, and give it just 5 to 7 minutes to ourselves to make our mental state to have a quality of stillness, calmness, and the clarity. So those are the two. We will come on these two topics over my talk, and we'll touch on these two. But just today, I just want to briefly to say those two things. Okay. Now the first thing, the topic that I would like to talk is the main methodology. Here, the methodology, that term that I'm using, I'm borrowing from the modern, the usage of modern, the academic institutions, those professors, doctors, speakers, lecturers. I'm just borrowing that term methodology. Methodology in the sense, like the Nagarjuna, Asanga, Aryadeva, these great Indian masters, when they explains, mainly the philosophies, epistemologies, and psychologies, and the ethics, and so on and so forth, how they present it, and how not only how they presented these topics, and also how they sort of analyze the topics that they present to their followers, and also I think they're used by themselves to analyze, to investigate, to examine, and that is what here that I'm going to talk on this. Before I do that, one very, very important point which these great masters have said again and again is, as a learner, in Sanskrit term, chela, students or learner. What they said is, learner should have 3 qualities, and I found that is very, very useful, important to really that kind of. I'm sure in the university level, that you have this, but I thought it's quite important not to lose that kind of, what you call the teachings. And what they have, for example, this great, I think, 2nd or 3rd century common era, Aryadeva, in Tibetan Pakpala, Aryadeva. He wrote several important, the philosophical texts. One is called 400 stanzas, 400 stanzas, and which is a commentary to his teacher Nagarjuna, the 2nd century great Indian master. And in that, there is there are 2 lines which nicely captured ourselves as a learner, as a student, as a chela. We should have what here I'll just read the translated from Tibetan into English. He said, it is said that one who is non-partisan, intelligent, and diligent. So that as a learner, we should have a very open mind. Here they translated non-partisan, in Tibetan, Subu Nepa. That means very, very open-minded, not taking any sort of, what you call not taking any kind of party line, this and that. Have a very open mind. If we have an open mind, then the speakers or the text that we are reading, we are able to understand what the speaker is talking about, and also what the text is explaining to us. And that is the first quality as a learner that we should have. Then second one is here, they translated intelligent. In other words, as a learner, we should have intelligent, or we should have the mental state to analyze, to investigate, not just take the face value, not just accept it, what is said, what is written, have the ability to analyze, to investigate. That's the second quality in Tibetan, Londen, Lotan Demba. Then the third mental quality that we should have, in here they're translated diligent. In Tibetan, Tunyer, that is, have the desire to learn, have the yearning to learn. And these three qualities, mental qualities, are extremely important to have as a learner, And here, this is repeated again and again by other masters using slightly different terms and different, but they all commonly they have presented. And I thought that is very, very nice, very important, what you call the advice, important advice, because nowadays in this 21st century, we are very much impartial, very much partisan, very much divided with the different lines, and within the university, within the learning institution, even in the monastery here, where I am, there are many sort of lines divided us, and that division, and that division in the mental, partition, the partition in the mental, in our mindset is very, very unhealthy, and particularly if we want to learn from others. So this is something which I thought quite useful to share with you as a Chala, as a learner, which we all are, as a student. We should have these three mental qualities: non-partisan, the intelligent, and diligent, or yearning to learn. So that is something, the first thing which I would like to share with you. Then another important way of educating ourselves, which again these great Indian masters have said again and again, repeatedly said, is how to structure our education, learning, how to structure our learning from the starting to until what the subject that we learn, we become experts. In the we may use that term, experts. In those Nalanda masters, they may use the term until that subject is become, very much part of ourselves, because most of their topics are, dealing with training the mind. So here, these great masters have explained three steps. And these three steps are, again, something very useful. The first step is, in Sanskrit, it is called sharvans, and quite often it is translated in English, listening. Because in those early times, in ancient times, unlike these days, we can have information, the books, e-books, easily available in many different forms and in many different ways, available in the 21st century. But in like Nagarjuna's time, like Buddha's time, or like those other great ancient Indian great masters' times, the informations, teachings are not that easily available in a written form, mainly verbally. So because of that situation, the term is used listening. So the previous one, which I mentioned, non-partisan. So in these great masters have said, listen from many masters, from the many masters. Listen many. In Tibetan, Mangdo Terpa, Mangbune Terpa. Mangbune Terpa, that means listened from many teachers, many scholars. Even if your topic is the biologies, the topic that you are studying is biologies, you should listen, you should nowadays read, from many different, what's called the professors. Although I know it is not that easy, I remember when I was studying my MA in SOAS, reading list goes sometimes 3 pages. So the students overwhelmed by the reading list. Not easy, but it is quite useful. It is quite useful. And that is what the initial learning is, through collecting informations on the topic that you are studying. And again, that is non-partisan, unbiased. And that is something, through that listening, reading, we will gain, what you call the understanding. We will gain understanding. Quite often, these Indian masters, they use, here I use the term understanding, they use panya, wisdom. Just from reading, listening, from many, we will gain understanding on the subject that we are. However, that understanding, these great masters have said, that understanding is not stable enough. That understanding is not strong enough, really, to us to act with that understanding. And in that case, the second step, which is, these days they're translated in English saying, contemplation or analysis. In Sanskrit, it is called manas, second stage, analysis, investigation. What we have learned from reading, listening from many of those scholars shouldn't leave it, shouldn't keep our understanding, shouldn't keep it just from the reading, from the listening that we have, what we have understood. Must take to the next step. That is, the analysis, contemplation, to contemplate, to analyze, to investigate. And that what it comes to here, it comes to these great Indian masters. They talk lot. Importance of, making one's own understanding. Understanding that we gain, that we get from others, reading others' books, reading others' articles, listening others talk. That understanding is simply other people's knowledge, not our own knowledge. That what we have understood from others' essays, others' articles, others' books, to make that into our own knowledge, then these masters have said the second step is important. That is analysis, manas, contemplation. And to do that, then the logics, the reasons, and these play tremendous important roles, reasoning, and for example, a great several great Indian masters, Dignac, 4th century, 5th century maybe, and Dharmakirti, 7th century, systematically structured logical, what you call the logics through the epistemological gaining the knowledge, gaining the proper understanding of the knowledge. Of course, these, like Dignac, Dharmakirti, their theory of epistemology and logic are developed through the interaction with many other, contemporary Indian masters. Not, many are non-Buddhists. So that is something very, His Holiness Dalai Lama quite often, say this, and as Vice Chancellor briefly mentioned, in the Tibetan tradition, although there are several countries where the Buddhist teachings are available, but some of the teachings or the knowledge that can you hear me? Hello? So I put my camera on, but anyway, can you hear me? Yeah, you hear from me. That is more important.
Yes, yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I will continue. It seems my camera is not working, so I don't know why. So I will continue now. So the Tibetan, in the Tibetan, these monastic institutions, these study institutions, monastic institutions, we have this very kept some of these unique Nalanda teachers' knowledge, that is like a Buddhist epistemology and a Buddhist logic, started from Dignac and continued by Dharmakirti, and also 8th century Shankarakshita and his student Kamalashila and so forth. Something which His Holiness says this is very, very important to not to lose and hand it over to the our brothers and sisters, Indian brothers and sisters, and to the outer world. So that is here second stage. Sorry, second step, which is contemplation. Now the knowledge that we get, we get from the contemplation, from the analysis, to make it to make it stronger, in the sense to make it part of our our own sort of actual experience, our own actual experience. In here, in the modern, the academic language may use expert. He or she is experts on this and this subject or that subject. In these great masters, they will say that, to become part of who you are and what you are, what you learn from your contemplation. Because most of the topics are these great masters, they talk about inner world, our thoughts, emotions, consciousness, and so on and so forth. And in here, the term is used, in the third stage, term is used, bhavana. That is quite often translated meditation. Bhavana, meditation, in the sense, from the contemplation, from the analysis, the knowledge that we have gained, those knowledge should be repeated again and again and again and again, until these knowledge become, something, your own actual experiences. when they become very much what the term is used by these great masters, spontaneous in the sense very natural. When this knowledge become very natural, otherwise, the knowledge that we gain from just reading others' books and listening others talk, or the knowledge that we just have done some analysis, investigation. If those knowledge live in that level, in the second or the first level, this knowledge will be can be lost for within the few years, within few decades. But if we manage to bring that knowledge at the third level through the meditation in the sense repeating again and again until they become very natural within ourselves, that is the third stage which these great masters. So the structure of educating ourselves is in these three stages. The first stage, technically called in English listening. Second stage, it is called contemplation. And the third stage, it is called meditation. The Sharvans, Manas, and Bhavana. So those are the three stages. In Tibetan, Ter, Sam, Gom. And I think particularly some of those important topics that we are studying in the university level, which if we manage to take our knowledge in that kind of into these three stages, then those knowledge will be very, very what you call the helpful, meaningful, and a very stable knowledge we can pass down to the others from our own genuine experiences. We can pass down to the others. So that is something which thing that. So now, then what I've just explained is talking about a general structure of how we should educate ourselves, taught by these great Indian masters. Oh yeah. Now then, moving to another stage, of course, these great Indian masters like Nagarjuna and so forth, their main focus in terms of the topic, in terms of the subject, is Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist epistemology, Buddhist psychology, and Buddhist point of view of the external world, and so on and so forth. But what they have, some of the most important, the methodology that they have used, or some kind of main principle to learn these topics that they have used, is something very, I think as His Holiness says very often, will be very, very useful to take to the modern education system. Although, the modern, what you call the education, particularly those college and university level, I noticed there is tremendous, what you call the tremendous element, strong element of, the research, collecting the data, and particularly those biologies, chemistries, and those they are very, looking at the very using some of the biologies, chemistries, and those some of the powerful technologies, to see the what you call the what is happening when they mix two different atoms or two different chemicals, and so on and so forth. There are these kind of strong elements of analysis. But these great Indian masters, Nalanda masters, their analysis is very much from the first person's analysis, what's called the examinations, not the third person's, which is the case in the modern academic institutions, way of analyzing, way of collecting data, way of experimenting, very much at the third person's level. Third person in the sense, you look at what's happening out there, in terms of the data collecting. For example, when I was studying my MA, and one of our lecturer, because I was studying the what you call them, the social anthropology, and to collect the data, we were sent to different places, and I was sent to not very far from the SOAS. There is a big train station, and I was asked to go to that train station and collect some data from the people who are waiting at the station for their train. So that level. But these great Nalanda masters, and I think same in the other ancient Indian, what you call the spiritual masters, they very much from their own, the analysis, data collections, everything is very much done on one's own first person's level. And in that sense, something unique. And I think sometimes it is quite useful. I think we should also have, data collecting, experimenting at the first person's level, which something quite useful. And here, many of you know, to do that, what what you call those great Indian masters, and also the historical Buddha Gautama, one of the earliest, the Sanskrit texts attributed to the Buddha, the historical Buddha. There is a famous verse saying Buddha has said, to his followers, his monks, not to accept his teachings, simply because out of respect, out of faith, but they should accept his teachings with a thorough analysis, like the goldsmith. Goldsmith examines his or her gold through cutting, burning, polishing, rubbing, going through many different stages to get the fine, very refined gold, as goldsmiths do. Similar to that, he said to his followers, they should, examine his teachings with thorough. So, at the Buddha's time, it seems, because this text, which is available in Sanskrit, in one of the earliest texts, that very verse which attributed to the Buddha, the historical Buddha. So, which is, I think, quite interesting to look at that. It really indicates in a very, very early time in India, like Buddha, historical Buddha was around 2,000 or more than 2,500 years. Even those days, there is this tradition, there's this culture or the tradition not to take the speech or the teachings from the face value, or from because of the reverence, because of the faith, but through rigorous analysis. Then analysis is done by oneself, one's own, analysis experiences. So that is something quite useful. And in that, there is this structure is mentioned, and the structure is called four reliances. And four reliances are really mainly talking about, rely in the sense, rely on the what is said, but not the person. Don't take it because he or she said, then you just accept it. Not in that, but what is said. That is the first step. Rely on the speech, not on the person's who he or she is. And then the second step, rely on the meaning, not the words. Not the words in the sense, sometimes some people are very, what you call the skillful to. Okay, there is a sound coming. What you call the. Some people are very good at words, selection of the words, how to speak, but there isn't that much meaning in that. So the second step is rely on meaning, not the words. Not the words. It means very, what's called colorful words, very nicely presented, but not that much meaning. So that is the second. And the third step is rely on the definitive meaning and not interpretive meaning. So, definitive in the sense, when we listen a verse or when we read what you call listen or talk, meaning certain topics, what he or she have said, may need to interpret for the different meanings. So here that is saying, yes, rely on meaning, but definitive meaning, not the interpretive meaning. And the fourth step is rely on, wisdom, not the, what you call the ordinary mind. Ordinary mind. So wisdom in the sense, that have the clarity and have the ability to analyze, investigate, rely on that kind of mental state when you, looking at the definitive meanings, but not in the our ordinary, those confused, those distorted mental states. So, these are what they call four reliances. Rely on, words or the speech, not to the person. Rely on the what's called the meaning, not the words. Rely on the definitive meaning, not the interpretive meaning, and rely on the the wisdom, but not on the ordinary distorted mental states. And these are called four reliances, which give us some kind of another structure in terms of when we are learning from others. When we are learning from others, talks, others' books, others' data collections, others, the analysis, these are the things that we should go through, channel through these four sort of steps. It is called the four reliances, which is something very, very useful, very useful I find very useful to look at, to learn that. Now then, we are going to move before we slowly wind down our talk. Last that I would like to touch on is another important, the methodological factor is what these great masters are called, the four principles. Four principles. So when we do the analysis, we need to bear in mind these four principles, and these four principles are also called, the four reasons or four principles. That is something we need to bear in mind when we do the analysis. Doing analysis, doing examination, doing, searching the truth to gain the knowledge, what is from our analysis, to gain, for example, when we set our thesis, form a thesis, and then to prove or disprove that thesis, then we use the analysis or the rational examination. And when we use the rational analysis or examination, then we need to bear in mind these four, what they call the four principles. And that is, first one is called the of nature. That is the basic bottom line. When our analysis reach at that principle, then we can't go any further rational analysis. We can't do any further rational analysis. We will not find anything further than that, and that is called, quite often in our what you call the colloquial language, we may use "that is how it is." That is how it is. So when we do the analysis, using many different formulas, like in the modern, the people who are doing the what you call the analysis or the research in different fields, using all kind of numbers. I have no knowledge using all these kind of through the mathematics. They can talk about infinite numbers when they crack down all those outside this universe or within this universe. Some of those other the planets other than our planet, the planet where we are now, they use all these numbers. But the Buddhist masters have understood what they said. There is a certain level, there is a limit which we can say that is the nature. That is the nature. That is how it is. And like, for example, 2 + 2 is 4. If we ask further reason why it is 4, 2 + 2 is 4. If we ask further, further sort of do some further research or seek further answer, there isn't that much that we can say, or we can find why 2 + 2 is 4. That is the nature. And what here, that's called, the principle of nature. Then another second one is called principle of function. Principle of function. So this, the different, what you call the material things, the building blocks of the matters, as well as the internal world, our consciousnesses, the emotions, thoughts, building blocks of the emotions, thought, consciousnesses, and so on and so forth. They all have some kind of functionalities. They have some sort of function activities. And through that function activities, we can do analysis. We can analyze. We can examine. We can find new, what you call the answers. Because of that kind of, functionalities, so on and so forth. So that is called the second principle. And third principle is called principle of dependence, principle of dependence. So any external and internal phenomena outside there, inside here, matters or non-matters, or the abstracts, any of these phenomena, they have some kind of, their existence is very much dependent on other factors. Therefore, when we do the analysis, we can use that nature of dependency, and the principle of dependency, and that will give us further understanding of the world, or further knowledge using that the fact or the principle of dependence. And the fourth one is logical evidence. So we can say, because this is this happened. Say A is here because B, and because C, that kind of, the bringing evidence, then try to prove or disprove certain things. Like as I briefly mentioned earlier, these Buddhist masters like Dignac and the Dhammakriti, where they explains epistemology, how the knowledge is developed, knowledge is gained within ourselves, to understand outside world, to understand internal world. And they talk about this, a lot on the fourth principle, the principle of logical evidence. So this logical evidence and that kind of system, that kind of structure, and that kind of method or methodology then can to apply to the understanding of principle of dependency, principle of what you call the functionality or functions, and the principle of basic nature to gain, so that is how these Nalanda masters talk a lot about how we should gain the knowledge from the outside world, from the inside world, having these kind of basic structures, structure of how the knowledge is built or cultivated within ourselves. As I mentioned earlier, though some of Nalanda masters like Vasubandhu talk about external world, like the cosmos and so on and so forth, but most of these great Nalanda masters, their main subject is inner world, our inner world. How our inner world, minds, thoughts, emotions, consciousnesses, valid mind, distorted mind, how they operate. And due to their operation individually, how we live our lives. And due to their operations, how that affects to our communities and our societies. And how they do it, these are the sum of the structures to educate ourselves and themselves and so forth. So that is more or less what I have planned today to talk. We are now nearly getting close to 5. And do you have any sort of suggestions or questions or anything like that to share, or
Geshe-la, there have been a few
yes?
questions. Can we ask you those questions?
Sorry, can you say it again?
Yeah. There are a few questions. Can I
Okay.
ask you those questions?
Yes, I can. Somebody can read the questions, then I'll try to answer. Is
Yeah.
that all right?
Yes. So I'm going to read the question. The first one
Yes.
is uh, what are the 8 consciousnesses which Dharmapada propounds?
Okay. Okay. Now, I think we will touch on these different numbers of consciousnesses, talked by these great Indian masters. We will come little detail on coming my talks, but just to mention here. Now, among these great masters, so we are talking about in terms of the time from Buddha's time, more than 2,500 years ago, or like the Nagarjuna, some second century Common Era, all the way down to the 10th, 11th century. We are talking about almost a 1,000 years time frame, and within that time frame, many great Indian masters, have had explored these topics, and among them there are different views. And for example, here the question is, what are the 8 consciousnesses? So to talk about 8 consciousnesses, first we need to look at what are the commonly agreed, accepted. The number is called 6 consciousnesses. 6 consciousnesses are very simple, very, very simple. The first 5 are the 5 sense consciousnesses, from the sight to tactile. Those are the 5 sense consciousnesses. And the 6th one is called mental consciousness, which I would like to talk more detail on that, because in the modern, although these days the modern psychologists, psychotherapists, psychoanalysis, they talk a lot, but not that detail, not that depth, which is available in these great Indian masters. The sixth consciousness, which is the mental consciousness. Now, on top of these 6 consciousnesses, then 7th one is called, because in English, mind basis of all. Mind basis of all. In Sanskrit, alaya jnana, mind basis of all. My Sanskrit is very, very poor, same as my English, but my English is a little bit better than my Sanskrit word. So I try to avoid using Sanskrit terms. So seventh consciousness is called mind basis of all. And the 8th consciousness is called, related to this 7th one, it is called afflictive mental consciousness. Afflictive mental consciousness. So now, briefly, very briefly, unless you have studied the background of these 8 consciousnesses, what I've just numbered, that will not give you any understanding if you haven't done background reading. However, this numbering 8 consciousness, this comes from a particular group of Indian masters, masters. In terms of the philosophical school, now I'm going in the Buddhist sense, in terms of the Buddhist philosophical school, that school is called Yogacara school, or it's quite often translated in English, mind-only school, or like in the modern terminology may use idealism, but I'm not happy with that term, because if we use that term idealism, it may have connotation of the Western concept of this idealism, but I will not, usually I don't use that. Mind-based, mind-only school, or in Sanskrit, Yogacara school. So masters who interpret Buddhist epistemology, Buddhist psychology, under that school of thought, then they talk about eight consciousnesses. They talk about 8 consciousnesses. That is on the top of the 6, which is commonly accepted number of consciousness. Precisely, we should say, mind, anyway, I'll avoid that. So on the top of six consciousnesses, then added 2, according to this particular Buddhist school of thought, mind-based Yogacara school masters, then they added these 2. First one is called mind basis of all. Second one is called afflictive mental consciousness. Okay.
Second, I have another question. Second question is, what is the difference between, or how do you distinguish between definitive meaning and interpretive meaning?
Okay. Okay. Very, very good question here too again. Now the definitive meaning and interpretive meaning. This one, again, we need to go back to, where this come from. These Indian great masters like Nagarjuna, Asanga, Aryadev, these great Indian masters, as I briefly talk about, Buddha himself said or attributed to text attributed to the Buddha, which Buddha himself stated, you should examine my speech. And along that line, these Nalanda masters, they put the teachings that attributed to the Buddha, they're put into 2 categories. The 2 categories are the certain teachings which are attributed to the Buddha. They say these are the definitive teachings. And certain groups of teachings, they say these are the interpretable teachings, not the definitive, these are the interpretable teachings. So how they differentiate group of the teachings that are attributed to the Buddha, they're saying these are the definitive teachings, and the group of the teachings that are attributed to the Buddha, they say these are the interpretive teachings. Then they talk about the meaning of these teachings. These meanings, don't need any further interpretation. We can accept as it stated. Therefore, these are the definitive teachings. Certain teachings, what is said in the lines or in the paragraphs, in the pages, the meaning need to interpret. Otherwise, these contradicts with the logic, these contradicts with the real world, these contradicts with some of the common sense. Therefore, they need interpretation. And that is called, interpretable teachings. And that is what is the meaning of definitive and what is the meaning of interpretable, not definitive. And that's where it comes from. I noticed when I was studying my MA, in the West, it might be in this case, also in here, in the West, in Christianity, around what's called Lutheran, Martin Luther, the Lutheran, around his time, then the Jesus teachings are really have little bit in that kind of fashion. Some are definitive, some need interpretation. I'm not saying exactly the same. That philosophy started in the West, started in much later than in the Buddhist case, in German, through around the Lutheran's time, to really yeah. So that is what here in the this on the basis of 4 reliances, rely on the definitive meaning, not the interpretive meaning. I will give you one short example. In a text, in a teaching, attributed to the Buddha, and the story is this: when Buddha, the historical Buddha, was near Rajgir, in Budgaya, near Budgaya, Rajgir, where he spent lots of time. Those days, it seems that area is very rich area, very prosperous area, many much, so, and one of the sounding king, had a very unpleasant nature, and he sort of does lots of, unpleasant activities. And in order to change his attitude or his behavior, Buddha gave one verse. And one verse, actually it says, kill your father and mother, kill your subjects, and all those things. If you do that, you will attain liberation. When Buddha said that verse to that king, the king was extremely surprised. Why Buddha said that word, kill your father and mother, kill your, sounding your subject and everything, and by doing that you will achieve liberation. And that king was really surprised when he heard that, although he was doing very, very unpleasant things. And then he asked Buddha, why you're saying that? Then Buddha interpreted that mother and father is not talking about your father and mother. It is talking about those, ignorance, attachment, and aversions. So then he realizes. So that verse is, the meaning is not definitive. Meaning is interpretable. Need to interpret. Otherwise, it will not. It contradicts with the reality. It contradicts with the common sense. So these Nalanda masters have developed this this kind of methodology. Even the Buddha's teaching, we should need to look at some are the definitive meaning, some are the interpretable meaning, and so forth. Okay. Any further questions?
Okay, one last question.
Okay.
It's from a participant who's asking, is the mind and the consciousness, what is the difference?
Okay.
Are they similar or different?
Okay. So now, in the Western world, and particularly in the academic world, using term consciousness is more acceptable. Using mind is a little bit, what's happening, what's going on. But if we use the term consciousness, they will not. So that is the one thing. In Sanskrit terms, it seems there are many different terms are more or less referring to the same thing. So therefore, in Tibetan, we also have many different terms to referring to the same thing. So, and when the translators translate into English, and sometimes they use awareness, sometimes they use mind, sometimes they use consciousness, and so forth. But basically, referring to the same thing. There isn't that much difference. But under the name of term of consciousness, under the term of mind, then we will see varieties of, the consciousnesses or the minds, which we will talk, coming our lectures. Okay.
So I think we'll come to an end now.
Yes.
And we stop here today, and we'll continue tomorrow with many more thoughts.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for your inspiring talk and your beautiful, lecture. It was very, very touching to all of us. And thank you very much. I thank all of you for patiently hearing and going through this beautiful lecture. And I hope all of you participate tomorrow at 3:30. We'll be meeting again. I would also like to thank the Vice Chancellor for all the encouragement in organizing this talk. And we will have many more now. We'll have 3 online talks, and then in April we're trying to have a offline series. So welcome you all again for this offline series in Goa University. So hope to see you again tomorrow at 3:30. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to
Yes.
Vice Chancellor and everybody who participated today. And I look forward for tomorrow and the coming days. Thank you. Oh, yeah.